Okay, so once its fetch is set to true, we invoke, or API content starts processing. So its fetch is set to true. We go to API content, and this is kind of a no, it's not stateless, because so when I search a user, when this app searches a user, this is the API component. This post loader and this little this little fetcher I've designed, which is kind of primitive. And then we're going backward in date, so and then you can just click the stop to stop it. So this is the API content. The separation of concerns here is not well thought out. This code was a little bit complicated, and I didn't want to spend too much time modularizing it. But I did try. So, well, yeah, let's take a look at what the code does. It is very, very messy. So I think that's one of the benefits to functional components too, is that you can separate your concerns a lot more. It's designed in a way where separation of concerns is more intuitive to implement. Whereas here I felt like all my logic is done in component did update. So like I have like these 3 different conditions, and depending on the condition, this line of code will run. And then I guess I can just like turn all of these into like separate functions, and then at least in that way it will look more modular. So okay, so in the API content, I used a few libraries. I used the Chess Web API, which is just a node module it's just to make these, it's just to simplify, it's to make fetching chess.com's API a lot easier, a lot more convenient. So they have this npm package, npm chess. Yeah, they have this Chess Web API. So this is chess.com's npm package. And then they have this get player monthly archive method, which fetches the games by month. And then the other method is the dispatch method. Because you're not allowed to make two requests simultaneously, you have to invoke your dispatch method in order to make multiple requests. I guess, yeah, that's to prevent like their site from being spammed. Okay, so this component is very messy. The entry point would be to check whether or not is fetch is toggled to true, and is fetch was false in the previous state. So once that is set to true, we would fetch the player's data. This dot fetch player data. Yeah, we would try to fetch the player's data using chess.com's getPlayer method. And then what this method does is it returns whether or not that chess player exists. And if the player does exist, it returns like a bunch of information, like such as their join date, or the date they were last seen, or their real name, or their picture if they've provided one. So if a user exists, we would grab the player. If a user does not exist, we would return a error message saying that the player does not exist. So let's say we look up, say Hikari1234, I do not exist. If we search that player, this is the message you would receive. If a player does exist, we would invoke handle player back from which is the method from the parent component. And what this method does is it sets states to the player component. So I guess it would make logical sense to put API content and player into one folder, one component folder. So in the app file, right beneath API we have the player, or right on top of API we have the player. So once player is set, we would go look at the player, and then this is just a stateless component. I believe it consists of props. I'm not sure if stateless component is the correct terminology, but it would just render the player's data. So as you can see here, we have Hikaru. I've tried to make this mobile friendly. So if you were on like a mobile device, I decided to not display the picture. If you were on a small device, so I think that would be like an iPad, it would display the device here, and yeah, the sidebar would also display here. And then in a medium-sized, on a medium-sized device, the picture gets rendered here as well as the sidebar, and the nav bar also becomes like a mobile version. And then from mid-size and up, it displays the same thing. And also I've used React icons, and I did some CSS work here. My CSS work is also like not well thought out. So if I were to expand on my project, I think I would need to modularize my CSS instead of just having them scattered from in one area to the next. So as you can see here, like I've used right now, since my app's simple, like I can decide what to do if we're on a small device, on a very small device, on a mid-sized device, on a larger device. But as my code base becomes larger, I think it's better to modularize my CSS code so that I only need to type. I don't have to like manually check if my app is inconsistent, but rather I have a system that will allow me to easily make changes or make updates or add features without worrying about if this considers like the if it's yeah, you know what I mean. So back to the API. So once a player set, we would reset the API's value, and then we would fetch and process games. So in this fetch and process games, we don't. Yeah, I've basically checked the date. If the end date, if the end date is set to like the year 3000, it would set the date to today's date, and then we would now invoke the dispatch method, which allows multiple methods to be invoked on chess.com's using chess.com's API. So let me just quickly walk through the dispatch method. So as you can see, get player by, or the monthly archive. The get monthly archive takes three parameters: a username, and the options and a callback. So I'm just mainly using username. And then the dispatch method takes the chess.com's method, the callback, the parameters for that method, the options, the callback parameters, and the priority. I didn't really read. I didn't really want to dive too deep into this. I just want it to be simple. So I just invoke chess.com's method, and then I pass in my own callback, and then the first three parameters here in this array are parameters passed into get player complete month, username, username, year, month, options, callback. So I'm not fetching archives. I'm fetching complete monthly archive. So it takes the username, year, month, username, the year, and the month. So I'm passing in the username, the year, and the month. So in this case, I'm passing in October 2022, which is the date, which is today's month date. And then in the next parameter, I'm passing another option, which includes the same thing, as well as the start date, and the start year, and the start month. Yeah, so this is just to set up a recursion call. So once we reach the base state, which would be the start date and the start date, the function ends. You'll see what I mean once we get to that. So this is the main function that makes the fetching possible. Admittingly, there's a lot going on in here, and I think I need to take advantage of the callback functions that the dispatch method can take to create separations of concern. But since I'm already passing in one callback, I didn't want to figure out how to pass in multiple callbacks, and I was also a little bit worried about doing something. Since I'm fairly new to this, I don't want to make a mistake and then make infinite calls, I didn't want to make a mistake in my recursion and then make infinite calls to chess.com's API and then potentially have them not allow me to use their API anymore. So basically I have, I think, 3 base cases. So the first base case is let me just show what. So we have the base case here on top. We have the logic done in the middle, and then on the bottom we have the method being invoked again by the month before. So if I were to search a user from, say, during the start of the pandemic until today, October 2022, I would check the base case. If the base case is not met, I would perform logic, and the logic here is to grab the data and save them into my app. Set state and save and set state to my app. And then once the logic is done, I would go back 1 month and invoke the same function again for September, and then August, and then July, and then June, and then down to January. And once January is reached, we would go back to December, and then we would go back a year. So from January 2022 back to December 2021. And then this keeps going on and on and on until either we reach an error, or say we get disconnected, something like that. If that happens, we would stop the loader. So as you remember, there's this loader here. So preloading shows, I think, it says that the data is being fetched, and then the loader is basically when it's loading. And then just looking at this, I think it makes more sense. And then the third option is if this stop is pressed. So we have the stop button for when it's being fetched. So let me just show you. So if I search for Hikaru, search for Hikaru, we have this little stop button, and then so once this is clicked, it stops. And then I guess it actually makes more sense to, instead of having it here, it makes more sense to have it here, and it looks cleaner like that too. I mean, I can just put all of this here as well, since I'm doing the exact same thing, but for readability and just, I mean, I should really have this here, or have this stop. I should really just have this here, but it's basically the same thing. I just want my code to be more readable. Yeah, and then the other base case is if we reach the date, the start date. And then this gets a little bit tricky too, because if I don't include the year as well, this will become an infinite loop, because January and December and January gets a little bit, there's some edge cases there. But yeah, this is the gist of my code, and then these are just I didn't really go over the different states. So I didn't go over this. So yeah, once the base case is reached, we stop the loader, we stop the preloader, and then we set the error handling to false. Oh, I see. Because here the error handling is true. I see what happened. So if there is an error, if the base case is reached without interruption, then we set the error to false. If there was an interruption, say an error message or response, or like the internet got disconnected or something happened on their end, then we would set the error to true. And then I forgot to go over this in error. So we have this error component, or in the error handle error method. We do set the message to check message. I forgot to talk about this. So this was hand wired, and I think this is something I need to like. There's probably different edge cases too, but chess.com's message is returned as a. So if I were to invoke this on myself, since it's a string, I just set the message to that message. But if the message were a JSON object, I need to grab message.message, check if it's a JSON object, and then if it is, I need to parse it, and then grab the message.message.message, and then set the message I want to display there. So how do I showcase what I mean? So let's say I grab a date in the future. Oh no, that's not the future. Let's say I grab November. Oh, I think I handled this on the client side, not, or in the let's say I have no internet. No, that doesn't invoke. Okay, a better example is, let's say you look for someone that doesn't exist. So this is the message. This is the message.message. This is the JSON.parse of message.message close parentheses .message. This is the message you get from chess.com. Whereas if it were error handling on my end, this is just a string. It's not a JSON object of a message when it's after being parsed to JSON. Okay. And then so now to the meat. So here this is once data is fetched, we get response.body.games. Yeah, fetch and set games. The callback from dispatch. Fetch and set games. It's been a while, so let me just briefly try to remember what I did here. Where did this message? So I pass. So fetch and process games. I pass in a callback, and then the callback. What happens here? I'm a little bit confused because there's all these different wrappers. So I passed in the callback function. Okay, so yeah, the callback function is where I would receive these response object and error message, and I also receive back the objects, the parameters I've passed in. So username. So this was a little bit confusing to figure out. But their documentation was pretty decent, so it just took a while. So on the fourth parameter, I'm passing in username, the end date, the start dates, or the end year, the end month, the start date, the start year, the start month. You also, in the callback function, you also will receive those 4 items again. So in that case, I can re-invoke my callback by just using those. In the future, I would like to make this a lot cleaner and just use destructuring. So everything would just be passed as an object. Instead of this like long list of parameters. Okay, so we received this response object which consists of games. And let me just quickly show what this looks like. So if I were to console.log response.body, let me just get a refresher on what this looks like. So if I were to search for myself, okay, so you get this response object which only consists of games, and then within the games you get an array of objects, and the objects look like this. It consists of and then I think from chess.com's end, they're also constantly changing what gets returned here. So far, this is what their response looks like, their response object. It just shows you the detail of the game. I'll talk about this in the next segment. Actually, this is I just want to show you what they return to you, what the response object looks like. And then once I receive those return objects, I go back to the parent method, and then I handle games, which is here, and this just sets the games. So this just populates the games, and once the games become populated, games wrapper becomes invoked, and that's where you see this page start populating the games. So if I were to search for myself, you see like it's just populating. So as this is running, this is also running on the side asynchronously. So okay. So I'm saving these games to the parent component, and then inside API, I've also decided to I'm adding the count. So here you see the number 1790. That's the count, and then I'm setting month. So the end month I think was just like a number. So I'm just setting it to like a month name. So it would be like July, or it would be spelled out. And then I'm actually saving the games twice. So this is a little bit redundant, and the reason why I'm doing this is because I'm still not sure which direction to go. But I just want to have the option of having both. Let me show you what I mean by this. Handle games. Okay, so here I'm saving the games, and the games are sliced and reversed so that it's gonna be in reverse order. Whereas here I'm saving the game, and I'm saving details about that specific fetched item. So the month. So I'm saving it. I'm also like saving the month and the year, and then it's not reversed. I'm doing this because like I'm not sure which format will be easier for me to So in the future, I would like to maybe like analyze the data, or so like if I do get out of these 700 games, maybe I would like to display like that player's win rate, or like if I want to get more specific, like the openings they've played, and like maybe display a graph, or maybe I would like to have like a search filter or a sort filter that allows you to search by opening, or sort by opening, or search by move order, or search by move order. So, yeah, I just have this here just in case I want to go in a different direction, or if I want to I'm not sure which one's going to be more convenient. So I decided to just leave both. Okay, and then every time the logic's done, we would update what's being displayed, which is done on set API, and this just sets states for all the different parameters. Why do I have a callback here? It's been a while. What's this callback do? Oh, the callback is the recurrent, just going back 1 month. So once we set everything, we want to invoke the callback, which is going back a month, and then we want to invoke the function again within the callback. So that's what this .set API does. Yeah, I want to wait for everything to be set before going on with the logic. And yeah, and next, so once the API fetches the data, we handle games, and then now we will go into the games component, and I will see you in the next component.